Good morning, fellow classmates. My name is Daniel Smith. My critical assignment today outlines the true cost of Proposition 64. As many of those who live in California are aware, Proposition 64 was a landmark decision voted upon in 2016 that legalized the use of recreational marijuana. Since 1996, almost 20 years ago, California was groundbreaking in the passage of Proposition 215, the first of its kind to support and allow legalized medical marijuana. What is Proposition 64? Proposition 64 was the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, a voter initiative that legalized cannabis in California. The initiative passed with 57% voter approval and became a law on November 9th of 2016. Most important throughout this critical assignment, I'm not here to pass judgment on people's personal opinion as it relates to the use of marijuana, but I would like to categorize some of the important components that surround Proposition 64 and why I believe it can and will have devastating effects on our youth and our society as a whole. The introduction, some of the historical components to Proposition 64 has been embedded in the roots of California history since 1973, with a variety of passages to attempt to legalize marijuana and allow for marijuana to be brought into society as a legalized component used for recreational purposes. In 1996, Prop 215 was designed to legalize medical marijuana for those in need that have seemed to have found uses for marijuana. Under Title 21 of the Code of Regulations for the federal government, it still lists marijuana as a Scheduled 1 narcotic that indicates it does not have any known medical uses, that are defined as drugs with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. This sits as the federal mandate for marijuana compared to the 1996 ruling by the state of California, which legalizes the use of marijuana. Most importantly, as we cross both Christian views and personal views and societal views, we ask as to whether marijuana should be legalized for those in true need of medical marijuana. I will take the stance, as I'm not one to judge those who are suffering. Most importantly, we need to understand the concept and means it was passed for were those suffering from terminal cancer, those suffering from some illness that they were unable to care for themselves. And if this found them peace in the pain, who are we to pass judgment? However, with much of what changes in society, we witnessed a enormous influx of medical marijuana being used by the 18-year-old that had the back pain, the shoulder pain, and found the quote approved doctor to issue them a prescription for medical marijuana and used it more in terms of recreational marijuana at only the age of 18. The landmark decision for Proposition 64 was passed on November 9th of 2016. And I believe in today's society, we have witnessed its effects. Proposition 64 was sold to California voters as a way to generate revenue into the state budget based upon something that was already very predominant in today's society. The indication was of $1 billion in revenue to the state that would be used for research, for substance abuse programs, for education, based upon the state excise tax of 15%, when unfortunately the actual revenue we've seen come into the state budget has ranged between $300,000 to $350,000 since its passage. Sorry, $300 to $350 million. What many take the time to look into prior to the passage, and as specifically discussed by many doctors and health professionals who are a conglomerative group of SAM, which stands for Smart Approaches to Marijuana. They specifically indicated, as this proposition passed, there was $25 million that went into the passage of this proposition, compared to only $2 million for the opposition to the proposition. The concern, based upon the money entered into this proposition, was another big tobacco industry. Much of this money that came into the passage of Proposition 64 came from that of Ivy League graduates, those business partners, the entrepreneurs that understood and saw the foresight that their investment into this proposition was going to garnish millions, if not billions, of dollars for their corporation. They cautioned that they were not worried about the low-level drug dealer or user on the corner, but what we should have been cautious with is that these companies and entrepreneurs are going to invest millions for that return. That return is at the risk of hurting individuals, of hurting society, all for the need and necessity of legalized marijuana. And of course, we do understand some of the supporters came from those of the marijuana users who do frequently or continually use marijuana. But again, we look at the tale of tobacco within United States history, the thousands of lawsuits against tobacco companies, the infomercials about being affected by tobacco smoke. And we have to ask, did we simply allow for history to repeat itself? First, we evaluate and have to understand that just as alcohol has affected society, so will marijuana. Many argue that driving under the influence of marijuana is not as dangerous, and from my personal experience of being a law enforcement officer, seeing the devastation that marijuana causes, it may not be the same effects, but it definitely affects your ability to safely operate a motor vehicle. Difficult maintaining attention, slower reaction times, all contained as components needed to safely operate a motor vehicle. Beyond that, we look into the society as a whole, understanding that entering in marijuana as a part of society, it will ultimately affect our children. When I say it affects our children, when you listen or hear a conference from many of the opponents from SAM, the Smart Approaches to Marijuana, the concern is not over the 40-year-old adult that uses marijuana one time on a Friday and goes back and maintains their profession Monday through Friday. The concern is raised from the adolescents. This includes up to a 25-year-old adult male whose brain is still developing. The use of marijuana and the chemical of THC has proven to be detrimental to the developing brain, as it has effects of trapping their current cognitive abilities and not allowing for the brain to grow. Some of these cognitive abilities that are affected is fear, flashbacks, avoidance, bad thoughts, but it also seems to elicit PTSD, hypervigilance, anxiety from those who may have bouts of depression. It is a catalyst to bring it to the forefront. These are just a small contained portion of some of why I believe it is a risk to society, but why I encourage everyone that although it is legalized and California has passed it, we need to be cognizant to our well-being, to our children's well-being, and to maintain a positive societal-based Christian view of a betterment to society and not allow this intoxicating, mind-altering substance to be a devastating effect on society. I thank you all for listening and hope you all enjoyed this class and have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and God bless.